Hito no Mi model, Nika. The true name of Luffy's devil fruit was finally revealed as a mythical Zoan devil fruit, the Hito no Mi model, Nika. It's a legendary devil fruit that the world government couldn't find even after 800 years of searching. When the Nika model of the Hito no Mi awakens, it will have even greater strength and freedom. But how will this manifest itself? In this video, we'll thoroughly study the meaning of the awakened abilities, strength, and freedom. Hello everyone, we're One Piece fanatics. Today, we'll take a thorough look at the abilities of the Hito no Mi Nika model. This video will contain spoilers up to chapter 1045 of One Piece, so please make sure to stop the video if you haven't read up to this chapter yet. Ready? Then let's dive in. The true identity of the legendary devil fruit. Why did the world government go through the trouble of giving that devil fruit another name? We suppose that it was to erase the name of the particular devil fruit from history. In chapter 1037, the existence of a legendary devil fruit was suddenly revealed. We had many questions at that time. What is its true identity? What is its name? And what exactly is this legendary devil fruit that has been the subject of so much speculation? We had to wait until chapter 1044 to have the answers revealed. After all, the Gomu no Mi is really a mythical Zoan. It's the Hito no Mi model, Nika. It turned out that the devil fruit that Luffy ate, the Gomu no Mi, was this legendary devil fruit. Since chapter 1, when Luffy ate a devil fruit, we've thought it was the Gomu no Mi. So, turns out, we've been wrong for more than 24 years! It was truly the biggest reveal in the story of One Piece, but there are two big mysteries that have arisen from this. The first is, what kind of abilities does this mythical Zoan devil fruit have? Second, why was the world government so afraid of this fruit awakening? Today, we'll explore these two mysteries in depth. We'll share with you all that we know about this legendary devil fruit. The characteristics of Sun God Nika. Apparently, slaves in ancient times believed in a legendary warrior that would eventually come and save them. They called him Sun God Nika. As we said, the first mystery from the revelation of the Nika model fruit is what kind of ability does this devil fruit have? In order to understand this, it is necessary to clarify the identity of Nika, who is the model for this fruit. So, first of all, here's what we currently know about Nika. We learn from Who's Who that in the olden days, slaves worshipped the sun god Nika as they thought he would one day come and liberate them. We also learned that the guard who told Who's Who this legend disappeared mysteriously a few days later. His body has the properties of rubber. In combat, he's supposedly only limited by his imagination, putting smiles on other people's faces. He is the warrior of liberation, known as the sun god Nika. This is what we know of Nika from chapter 1044. So, to sum it up, Nika is a warrior whose ability is limited only by his imagination. He liberates slaves and makes people smile. Nika is also known as the god of the sun. Nika's body is made of rubber. Nika's name and legend are being kept secret by the world government. These are the four characteristics that make up Nika. So as Nika is the model of the devil fruit that Luffy ate, it's easy to assume the fruit will also grant these four characteristics. Based on this, let's think of the abilities of the legendary devil fruit. Hito no Mi Mythical Model Nika. What are the abilities of the Nika model of the mythical Hito no Mi? It might be a bit too much to explain everything in one go, so we'll break down our answer into three parts. First, we'll talk about the mythical type devil fruits, then about Zoan type devil fruits, and finally about what happens when they're awakened. We'll discuss each of these points one by one. So first of all, mythical types. We currently know of 7 mythical model devil fruits. For example, for Phoenix model of the Tori no Mi, the Seryu model of the Uo no Mi, and the Okuchi no Makami model of the Inu no Mi. These are two common points to mythical types. The first is that the models are based on legendary creatures from our world, and the other is that the abilities of mythical models are the same as the ones legendary beasts have in our world. For example, the Phoenix, the Seryu, meaning blue dragon, and the Okuchi no Makami, who is the deification of the extinct Japanese gray wolf, and all mythical creatures from our world. The Phoenix model gives the ability to regenerate its user with flames. The Seryu model's ability includes breathing fire, controlling lightning, and throwing cutting wind blades. For the Okuchi no Makami model, it grants the ability to blast ice-cold air, We can clearly see that these models all match the powers of our world's legendary beasts. In short, mythical models and their abilities in One Piece are both based on legendary creatures from our world. So, obviously, we can apply these two ideas to the mythical model Nika of the Hito no Mi. Yes, if you look at it this way, Nika is a legendary entity and has supernatural powers. We'll explain this mythical model's specific abilities later on, but before that, to make things easier to understand, let's take the time to explain the second part of our answer. What are Zoan-type devil fruits? The other name of the Gomu Gomu no Mi is the Hito no Mi mythical model Nika. It was revealed in a conversation between the five elders in chapter 1044 that the devil fruit Luffy ate was not a Paramecia devil fruit, but a Zoan devil fruit. This means we need to think about the characteristics of Zoan-type fruits. However, we don't have much information about this type of devil fruit. We get some information in chapter 349 when Lucci transforms into his human beast form. A carnivorous Zoan is a lot more violent. For Zoans, it's our special ability to strengthen ourselves physically. This suggests that when a Zoan devil fruit is consumed, its abilities will strongly reflect the characteristics of the creature it's modeled on. So, in the case of Luffy, who ate the model Nika of a Zoan-type devil fruit, we think that Nika's characteristics should be reflected in Luffy's abilities. As we explained earlier, Nika's characteristics are that his body has the properties of rubber and that he's a liberating warrior who uses the power of his imagination to fight and brings joy to people. We can already see that these characteristics of Nika are reflected in Luffy. And finally, the third part of our answer, the ability of an awakened devil fruit. In rare occasions, one's abilities awaken and begin to affect not just their own body, but their surroundings. As we learn from Doflamingo's speech in chapter 785, the awakening of a devil fruit's abilities can also affect the surroundings of the user. For example, Doflamingo turned the buildings around him into threads, and Kid magnetized Big Mom. Many of you have been looking forward to the awakening of Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi to see what kind of battle he has in store for us. But in chapter 1044, the shocking truth was revealed. The devil fruit that Luffy ate was not a Paramecia type, but a Zoan type. His awakened abilities will therefore be very different from what we all predicted. That's an awakened Zoan type ability user. Their abnormal resilience is their strong point. In One Piece, despite their awakening, we don't see the jailer beasts affecting their surroundings in any way. In other words, what Doflamingo explained just before about awakened fruit users affecting their surroundings seems to only apply to Paramecia-type devil fruits. 4 of the jailer beasts that awakened are wild animals: a cow, a koala, a rhinoceros, and a zebra. From this, we can assume that their extraordinary toughness and resilience is the result of their awakening of their resilience as wild animals. So, maybe the true nature of an awakened Zoan devil fruit is that the characteristics of the creature it's modeled after becomes more powerful. It would mean that Luffy's devil fruit awakening would give his rubber body more strength and freedom. There are also mentions of the abilities of the awakened Nika model in chapter 1044. Awakening of the Hito no Mi model Nika exponentially strengthens its user's rubbery body and grants them even more freedom. So we understand that if we apply the awakened Zoan devil fruit's ability to increase the characteristics of its model to the strength of the mythical god Nika, then its user will become an extremely powerful being. Also, immediately after awakening his abilities, Luffy says, "I feel anything's possible now." As we can see from this, it seems that the Luffy who has gained even more freedom is now only limited by his imagination. In fact, it seems that he really can do anything he wants. Just after awakening, Luffy is able to grab Kaido with his giant hands and use him as a skipping rope. He can also grab the ground and lift it up to bounce back Kaido's bolo breath technique. Furthermore, we can see Kaido's body turning into rubber and the ground bending like rubber to repel Kaido's attacks. Don't you all think that it kind of looks like Luffy's freedom of imagination is also influencing the people and things around him? Let's explain. If you think about Nika's free fighting style and his desire to free the oppressed, then you can see that freedom is the main characteristic of this god. This means that Luffy is able to influence his surroundings because of the freedom characteristic of the mythical model Nika, and not because it acts like an awakened Paramecia-type fruit. You've also probably noticed that Luffy's fighting style changes after he awakens his ability. During his fight with Kaido, When he was surprised, his eyes popped out. He also keeps rolling around laughing. These comical scenes could reflect the fact that Luffy is now fighting based on his own imagination. So, let's sum up what we know about the mythical Nika model of the Hito no Mi Nika. The mythical sun god has a body made of rubber and is extremely strong. His freedom-loving spirit was materialized as in a mythical devil fruit, which is, as we know, the Hito no Mi model Nika. Luffy's awakening leads to further power and freedom. This is my peak. This is Gear 5th. In other words, in addition to a simple power-up of his strength, he can also fight by doing other unthinkable things, such as becoming gigantic or pulling up the ground. This is the power of the Hito no Mi model Nika when it awakens. So, although Luffy's Hito no Mi is a Zoan-type devil fruit, it doesn't have the resilience and toughness that Crocodile mentioned. The awakened form of this devil fruit gains greater strength and freedom, instead of the usual resilience and toughness. The reasons why the government fears Nika's awakening so far: we've seen what kind of entity Nika is, and what kind of abilities does the Nika model of the Hito no Mi have. We've uncovered our first mystery, but let's not forget that we still don't know why the world government was afraid of its awakening. This is our chance to erase the nuisance. Ever since we've known of the existence of a legendary devil fruit in chapter 1037, we've also known that it's been a source of concern for the 5 elders of the world government, as they fear the awakening of this devil fruit. It later turned out that this legendary devil fruit is the Hito no Mi model Nika, which ended up awakening as the 5 elders had feared. But we don't think the 5 elders were afraid of it being the most ridiculous power in the world, as they described it, or that it would simply make its users stronger. So why on earth would the world government be afraid of the awakening of the Nika model? We think that it's because the current ruling system headed by the Celestial Dragons, the world nobles, would come under threat and could collapse. That's because, as we explained just before, the main characteristic of Nika is his love for freedom and his desire to liberate the oppressed. The awakening of a Zoan-type devil fruit gives the user a power-up of the characteristics of the creature it is modeled after. In other words, if the model Nika devil fruit awakens, then Nika's ideology of loving and fighting for freedom and the oppressed will also become stronger. And the people who will be most threatened by this growing ideology of freedom are the people in charge of the current oppressive regime, the Celestial Dragons. It's a story that goes back 800 years. 20 kings from 20 kingdoms gathered at the center of the world and formed one massive alliance, the present-day world government. The descendants of those kings are the Celestial Dragons. As the Celestial Dragons are descendants of the original 20 royal families who created the world government 800 years ago, no one can stand against the Celestial Dragons, and their dominance has grown unchecked over time. Being at the top of the current hierarchy, the Celestial Dragons kill and enslave people with impunity. Anyone who dares defy their authority and looks for a different way of life means trouble to the Celestial Dragons. That's probably why the world government feared the awakening of Nika's love of freedom. And actually, we think there's another reason why the world government is afraid of the awakening of the Nika model of the Hito no Mi. This is because we think that 800 years ago, Joy Boy, an awakened and talented user of the Nika model devil fruit, freed a large number of oppressed people and shook up the leaders of his times. There are 3 facts that back up our theory. The first is that 800 years ago, we know that someone called Joy Boy awakened the ability of the Hito no Mi Nika model. The second is that there seems to have been a freedom revolution during the Void Century. And the third is that a powerful kingdom, known as the Great Kingdom, that threatened the rule of the world government was destroyed. Let's start with our first fact. It's been 800 years since Joy Boy awakened the Nika model. It hasn't awakened for centuries. From the 5 elders' conversation in chapter 1037, we understand that the Hito no Mi model Nika hasn't been awakened for the past few hundred years. In chapter 1043, Shueisha exclaims, "I can hear the drums of liberation. This is the first time in 800 years. He's there, without a doubt. Joy Boy, he has returned." From this and the fact that we know that Joy Boy is the last person to have awakened the legendary Hito no Mi, we understand that the 5 elders of centuries are 800 years. That's how we know that it was 800 years ago that Joy Boy awakened this ability. Next, let's look at the second fact. There seems to have been a freedom revolution during the Void Century. The Void Century is one of the greatest mysteries in One Piece. We don't know what actually happened during those 100 years. But actually, we believe that there must have been some sort of revolution at that time. There are two main reasons for this. The first is that the Tontatta Tribe was freed from oppression 900 years ago. This continued until 900 years ago. It was the age of slavery. The Tontatta Tribe was enslaved by the Don Quixote family, the rulers of Dressrosa. 800 years ago, King Riku took over when the Don Quixote family moved to Marijoa as one of the 20 world noble founding families. It seems as if the Tontatta Tribe's age of slavery had already ended when the king was replaced 800 years ago. But it was actually 900 years ago that the age of slavery ended, so 100 years before the departure of the Don Quixote family. Gancho, the king of the Tontattas, said that they don't know what happened during those 100 years known as the Void Century. What we understand from this is that what triggered the end of the Tontatta Tribe's enslavement was not the replacement of the ruling family from the Don Quixote family to the Riku family, but had more to do with events that took place during the Void Century. So the Void Century could have been marked by the freedom movement of the Tontatta Tribe. And there's a second reason why we think the Void Century saw a freedom revolution. And that's because Joy Boy promised to create a world where fishmen and humans could coexist. 800 years ago, Joy Boy said that he couldn't keep his promise to the Mermaid Princess. This promise was to create a world where fishmen and humans could coexist. We learn of this from Neptune's monologue in chapter 621.
The world that Otohime dreamed of has a history of spanning hundreds of years. It is one and the same as the dream that our distant ancestors fervently pursued, to no avail.
As you might remember, Otohime's dream was for the Ryugu kingdom to move to the surface and for fishmen and humans to coexist. The fact that the same dream was crushed hundreds of years ago might suggest that Otohime's dream world was connected to Joy Boy's promise. Furthermore, as you all know, fishmen have a history of being heavily discriminated against, as it's only been 200 years since fishmen are not classified as fish anymore. For example, on Sabaudi Archipelago, Hachan, the octopus fishman, was told that he was disgusting and should go back to the sea. The fact that fishmen are subjected to harsh discrimination and persecution could suggest that they used to be treated like subhumans, like slaves. With a history such as this, we can understand why 800 years ago, Joy Boy tried to create a world where fishmen and humans could live together in harmony. In other words, he wanted to free the fishmen from oppression. But even though he couldn't fulfill his promise, as there's still discrimination against fishmen, it appears that in the Void Century, there was a movement to emancipate the fishmen. So far, it appears that the Void Century marked a turn in the fate of the Tontatta Tribe, as well as for the fishmen. These 2 points suggest that there must have been a global liberation movement in the Void Century. So, it's likely that this freedom revolution led by Joy Boy 800 years ago left a permanent mark in people's minds. And finally, the third fact that supports our theory is the destruction of the mysterious Great Kingdom that had an ideology that worried the world government. The existence and ideology of this kingdom poses a threat to you, the world government. In chapter 395, Professor Clover reveals the existence of a great kingdom during the Void Century. He explained that the ideas held by this great kingdom were a threat to the world government. At this point, let's remember that the ideology of the sun god Nika is freedom and the liberation of the oppressed, and that the world government would be extremely troubled by the spread of this ideology. So, as the great kingdom is also a threat to the world government, it wouldn't be surprising if its ideology is also the same, freedom of the oppressed. Our first argument to back this up is that, as it was also 800 years ago that Joy Boy awakened the model Nika of the Hito-Hito no Mi, it is possible to conclude that Joy Boy came from the Great Kingdom. Our second argument is, given that the Void Century also saw the liberation of the Tontatta Tribe and the Fishmen, the following storyline is possible. Joy Boy of the Great Kingdom is the awakened user of the Nika model of the Hito-Hito no Mi. Under the influence of his Devil Fruit ability, Freedom of the Oppressed, he fought for the liberation of the Tontatta Tribe and the Fishmen. Obviously, the people who were most threatened by Joy Boy's actions were the people holding power at that time. Fearing that they would lose their authority if the oppressed were freed, They formed an alliance of 20 kingdoms and destroyed Joy Boy and the Great Kingdom, along with their ideology. So what does this mean? We think that because of this past, if the mythical model Nika awakens once more, and the ideas of freedom and liberation of the oppressed are revived, then the world government will fear that someone like Joy Boy will emerge and their current power structure will collapse. The Will of Devil Fruits. There's another very important fact that came to light in chapter 1044. All Zoan fruits have a will of their own. It has been discovered that Zoan-type devil fruits possess a will of their own, meaning that the Nika model of the Hito-Hito no Mi that Luffy ate is believed to possess a will of its own. It's a fact that for 800 years, the world government has been unable to obtain it, and as the five elders said, it's almost as if the fruit itself is evading us. In chapter 784, Luffy used the Gear 4th technique, Gomo Gomo no Culverine, against Doflamingo, and at that time, it seems that he says to himself, "Get him, Python!" It's one of those frames that is easily overlooked, but if you reread it, knowing that Zoan devil fruits have a will of their own, then you see the scene in a different light. The words, "Get him, Python!" can be interpreted as Luffy talking directly to his devil fruit as if he had a will of its own. From this, there's a very high possibility that the Nika model of the Hito-Hito no Mi possesses a will, and the will of this devil fruit is to escape from the world government in order to reach Joy Boy, who will be born 800 years after its former user, the first Joy Boy. In chapter 968, when Roger's adventures are recounted, the Sea Kings are talking about the birth of their leaders in a faraway sea.
Our queen, the queen of the Sea Kings, is the manifestation of Poseidon, Shirahoshi.
They also talk of Joy Boy being another king born in the distant sea, who will guide Shirahoshi's power. According to this, then Luffy was already Joy Boy from the time he was born. In other words, Luffy didn't become Joy Boy because he ate a devil fruit. Luffy was destined to become Joy Boy, and its condition being to awaken the Nika model of the Hito-Hito no Mi. So the reason why this devil fruit had eluded the world government for 800 years was so that Luffy, Joy Boy, could eat it. We think that it was trying to reach Luffy. That's it for our theories, but what do you guys think about the abilities of the mythical Nika model of the Hito-Hito no Mi? We'd love to read your ideas in the comments section. To continue to discover the amazingly complex world of One Piece, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That's it for today. See you next time.